At PayU, we've decided to go on a journey to redefine the fintech space. This is why we're traveling around the world, crossing borders to meet experts, leaders, and innovators. People who we admire, people who are writing our alphabet. And by that, I mean the Fintech Alphabet.
Thank you everyone for being here. We've got 15 hours, time zone difference between Govind here with us, in the Silicon Valley to Randy in Singapore. And in the middle, myself in London, Barbaros in Istanbul and Prashant in Mumbai. So truly a global webcast. Thank you guys for being with us. So I'll do a quick intro, of yourself, and then I'll start, just asking you how you been doing. So here we have, Govind, founder of Webmo. We have Prashant, founder of PaySense. We have Barbaros, founder of EasyCo, and Randy, founder of Red Dot Payments. And in common, they have something apart, the good looks and the good spirits is they're all part of the PayU family now. So I want to go back, to your really personal story as an entrepreneur, as a founder, right? And for me, the first thing is really all of you, have worked also for very big companies before. Yet at one point, you decided, this is it, I'm going to start my own business, right? And you could have decided, the big corporate world type of career, but at one point something, came and you decided, to go on the adventure of starting your business. So what was the sign, that you saw that made you really start your own business, really? And when you think of the times that we are living through, do you think this is the biggest test that you had to go through as an entrepreneur, as a business person?
I'll go first. So I think a number of things. First of all, on the question on what was the trigger, I was working for a number of large companies, from AT&T to KPMG to projects for UPS. You can name all the brand names and been there, and IBM. But at some point, as the whole internet thing took off, e-commerce took off, and so on, really felt that needed to try my hand at something, do things on my own. And one of the biggest challenges at that time was you don't know what you don't know. That's the biggest thing. On one side, it is exciting, and on the other side, obviously, it's a big challenge on a day-to-day basis because you're leaving a comfortable environment, comfortable way of life to do something on your own. But that's how I got started with trying to do something with the change with all the revolution happening with e-commerce and payments and so on, having worked in the banking space for a little while, and said, let's give it a shot. And India at that time was of great interest. India is always of great interest, except India takes its own time on a lot of things. But at that time, trying to bring e-commerce and payments and technology to India seemed very exciting, having grown up and having been part of the Indian growth story and prior to that in technology as well. So that was the trigger, and then said, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. Clearly, you want to have grand plans and grand visions, but most often it is one step at a time. That's how that started.
How do you feel, guys? Was it the same kind of genesis for you?
So my story was slightly different. This is actually my third startup that has exited, and so that I've always had this bug to do a startup. So this is back in 2015. This was the time where there was a lot of very exciting things that were happening in India. I was the head of product for APAC for PayPal. and I was looking very closely and keenly at India. And I was one of the biggest sponsors for bringing PayPal to India and building out a big story. Given that e-tail revolution was happening, everything was going digital, mobile penetration was going mainstream. It was a very exciting time. I don't know how many of you guys recall this, but it was a very exciting time. I believed so much in the market, the opportunity, and what was happening. And I really wanted to come in and build to be honest, buy now, pay later business. I wanted to decouple purchase from payments because I thought with e-commerce riding a wave, payments had to innovate fast enough to keep up. And the payments at that time was still very clunky. And I wanted to just decouple payments from purchases. And that was basically it. That was in the back of my mind. And just as that was happening, eBay and PayPal decided to split. And to rationalize the stock price, they said, Prashant, go and fire 20% of your team. You can use any logic that you want, and that didn't sit well with me at all, because I had spent so much time putting together a world-class team, and to let go a percentage of that so that the stock price could hit a certain value didn't make any sense to me. So I did fire 20%, and I just included myself in that list, just to rationalize that outcome, and that's basically was the reason PaySense was born.
Barbaros, Randy, what's your story? What is the sign that you saw?
Thank God I don't need to fire myself to start a company. But I was working for Visa, and back then I was looking at the payment volume. I was seeing the growth in 2011, Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. They're all growing like, 70, 80, 90% year on year. So I was sitting at Visa thinking to myself that, do I really want to keep doing a day-to-day job? Not that it's a bad thing, but I decided, I say, you know what? Why not I give it a shot? And one of my colleagues, he went join Alipay, and they said that they are looking for a distributor in this part of the world. So I went down to Hangzhou, met them, and then you know what? Next thing I know, I become the distributor in Southeast Asia. But of course, it's not a breeze. Like, the truth of the matter is, early days in 2011, not many people know what Alipay. We have hotels or merchants telling us that they don't really want the China payment more because they don't know what they do and what is it about. And then fast forward, then we have to then start building our own gateway, and then from there build the capability in-house. And I got stuck in. I wasn't thinking of doing so much. And then next thing you know, you're doing what, Series A, Series B, and man, those are not my style. And I'm quite glad I ended here.
So you get sucked into. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's Barbaros. What about you? It's quite a story as well for you.
Yeah, I think looking back, there is a lot of small signs, but the most obvious sign, if I'm looking back, was I was working for Klarna. So I was the country manager for Klarna for Germany at that time. And it was very funny because I was sitting in different meetings and I was pitching Klarna to customers, to employees. And I was always telling the story of three Swedish guys coming out of the university and building a company. At the end of the day, in that specific point, I was like, why am I telling the story of someone else? Why am I not writing my own story? And I think this was a very, very certain point where I said, okay, this will be not a long-term topic for me. So I want to definitely take the shot and try to build my own story. And of course, then meeting the right people like Tassim, my co-founder, and then having the opportunity, having Turkish origins, and then e-commerce in Turkey was growing very fast back in 2011, 2010. And then coming from that, finding the right investors. I think every small step brought us to that point where we are today. But looking back, I think this specific moment where you recognize and see you don't want to tell the story of others all the time, so you want to write your own story. I think this was a very specific point, yeah.
A lot of companies actually start, not just from a rational point of view, this is the opportunity, the slide, etc. It starts from a conversation between two people at a cafe, wherever it is. We could do this, we could do that, etc. what I'm trying to understand is the origin, of a successful business, be it, two co-founders getting together, also the very small initial group of employees who decide to join you. What was your story there? And, what is it that you had to sell, to your wife, because, hey, I saw a sign, I want to start my business. Hang on. How did you sell that to your first employee? How did you sell that to your wife? How did you go about, having co-founders with you?
I think it's selling is a very important point at the beginning. So you have to sell a lot. But at the same time, to being a good seller, so to sell things, you have to believe in that, what you're doing. So I think there is a kind of, you have to be convinced about the idea. And then the other part of it is definitely the risk what you're taking. So it was not like, that I thought I'm taking that much risk at that moment, because it was always, you saw the risk. So for me, it was, okay, if I'm founding a company, I give it a try for 1 year. I have a co-founder, and the next step, finding investors. If we're doing that within the next 6 months, we will go to the next step. But if we're not, then I'm going back to professional work, and I want to I have to find a new job. But at the beginning, I think it's very important that you are convinced to the step what you're taking. You know your risks, what you take, and at the same time, I think it's very important to have the right people around you. So the first time where I told this story to my wife, that we were based in Germany, I was working for Klarna, so we had a house, we had cars, everything was great. Where I told her that, okay, I want to quit, and then I will move to Istanbul and we will found a company in Istanbul. It was not like that she thought it's crazy. What she told me was, this is a sign in your eyes, which is you seem very, very happy and very convinced about that. And then the rest was about trust. So she said, I'm trusting you. That this will be the right way, and this gives you a lot. With every person you're convincing, you believe more into the journey, and I think this is a kind of, it sums up to the success at the end where you end.
How was it for you guys? Was it the same? The little spark in the eyes?
I think it's like, just like Barbara says, you reinforce your story, you reinforce your conviction, you reinforce how you believe. And then, of course, that led to the company becoming real. So, but the first person I had to bring on board was my wife. And then we went on to get investors on board and, getting the first employees on board. But yeah, it's a lot of storytelling, a lot of gesturing into the future and building that out. That was my story.
Govind, how did you make it work for you? Because you've built your family and life also in the Silicon Valley, right? And
Yep.
India is where Webmo is, even if, to be fair, Webmo is truly an international business, right? I've lost count of how many countries where you serve banks and different merchants there. But how did it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, it was slightly different. It was more of a pivot. I'd gotten off of the large corporate environment and was doing some consulting at Silicon Valley Bank. And in fact, we built their online banking system. So that was their first online banking system. That's kind of got us started with banking and financial services and so on. And then for a very short period of time, I became the CTO of Silicon Valley Bank. If you look at the history of Silicon Valley Bank, I've been the only CTO of Silicon Valley Bank. And then it took me about 5 months to realize, no, I'm not a bank employee. The only thing left was, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense for me to be a bank employee, but bank is where the money is, and that's where we should be looking at doing something. And so that's how we got into e-commerce and payments and so on, having moved from banking and online banking and built a number of systems for Silicon Valley Bank. And then realized that, the best way to try something here is to move into a space which is very early, very nascent, and then look at payments, especially digital payments. Because at that time, even in the US, nearly 70% of payments, retail payments, were cash and checks.
Right.
There's some enormous number of some 25 billion checks being written every year at retail points, point of sale. And e-commerce was 98% cards. So we said, well, how do we put this together? Seemed like an opportunity. That's how we got started. Now, obviously, that pivot from a very comfortable consulting bank CTO role to trying to do something on your own is a tough one. And especially like somebody pointed out, selling it to my wife was the first challenge. She herself is an engineer. She was with Intel for a number of years. She was in the microprocessor group and very analytical, very hard-nosed to be a designer there. And so the process of selling to her was probably, like Barbara said, became a process of selling to myself that this can happen. And again, it was, let me try this for a year, see how it goes. If you get some traction, we'll take it forward. If not, obviously, go back to consulting. That's kind of how it got started. And 1 year became 2, and then we got into products and talked to banks and got into India and a couple of other markets. So that's how we got started.
Randy.
Yeah, I really wanted to do something all the time, and payment is the first love. I really mean it. When the first day I saw my father with a gold Citibank card, that was long ago when I was still young, to the point that when I applied for my first internship, it was with Visa International. I become a graduate intern with them before I become a Citibank and also taking care of cards. And before I went back to Visa, I mean, payment has been always there. So somehow, one way or another, I only know payment. But what I did not know that it's so tough starting a business, and slightly a bit different. I didn't really give myself a timeline, but instead, truth be told, I really believe in perseverance. I really almost went bankrupt twice. First time in 2013, had a very bad JV with one of the Indonesian partner that I got screwed over. Then another time in 2014, then the company ran out of the money, and maybe you can call it 2015, 2016, maybe almost 3 times. So basically, I just knew that, okay, you just have to pivot, you just have to try, you have to be resourceful, be humble, go and ask for help, and just keep trying until the day that it works. Yep, and that's my story.
It's a great story, yes. There's a lot of common, themes, across all of these stories, right? It's That's really fascinating, this one. By the time we met, guys, your business were doing pretty well, right? I mean, you were already, it was not just a vision, it was a real business. There were teams, there were investors, there was products, there were merchants, there was everything. And what is it that, again, for you, made you decide at one point that the story you want to build, you want to build it with PayU? What is it that at one point, you thought joining forces with PayU would make things not possible? What is it giving you, right? What was, the trigger for that?
Grow as you get to a certain size, certain point, you can ask yourself, okay, what's next? What's next, in a very personal sense, as well as for the company? Because now it's no more you wanting to do something, you wanting to experiment. Hey, it's exciting. Let me get the next customer, the first, the second, the third, and so on. But it also becomes a question of we have 500 employees. And the multiplier factor of the 500 employees is large. Now, what's the future for them? How do we take it forward? What's next? How do we take this company to the next level? Because especially if you put in so much time and big part of your life, then the question is, how do we land this puppy? Where do we take it next?
Yeah.
So as we looked at, me and the investors and the board looked at options, we said, look, we can look at raising another round of funding. We can try to take it to the next step. But at some point, we got to look at this because ours is a bit of payments is, as you know, is complex, fractured, many layers to it. Very few places can you take slivers of it and grow it to be a very large business. Otherwise, the greatest synergy is in it being part of a larger ecosystem, because that's when you get the benefits of the synergy, benefits of the larger ecosystem, and then, everyone benefits.
Yeah.
And like I said, employees are a very big part of that, right? So then the question is, how do we get this to a point where now, one, it contributes and makes the sum larger than the individual parts, right? And Wibmo does this number of things very well. Wibmo is trying a number of things. Wibmo has areas of improvement, like any business, any technology company, any founder-run company. So at that point, we said, look, maybe we should look at this as playing a very important role as part of somebody that's very passionate in a larger global ecosystem. Because at that time, Laurent, we were in about 20 countries, banks serving banks in 20 countries by the time we were talking to you. And then that's when we said, okay, maybe what makes sense is for us to be part of a larger story, a larger journey, which is more global, with a larger global footprint and with a lot of interest and passion in growing payments, because that's our strength, that's where we were. And from an employee standpoint, they become part of a larger organization that has a strong professional streak to it and, benefits all the employees. So that's kind of how we got down that path.
Is that more or less what you thought, guys, just to rebound on this?
We had started a journey with PayU almost 3 years ago, and neither of us knew where it was all going to end. But I think when we brought PayU on the cap table, I think one of the conscious choices we had already made was, well, does this make sense? If this were to be the destination, does this destination make sense? So I think this end exit, if you may, was just a formality, but the deliberation had already happened perhaps 3 years ago. And at that time, I think the way I was thinking about it is, well, payments, lending is a deep pocket game. So I'll take that off first check. It does require commitment to a market. You can't just be a fly by night, partial interest in a market. You need to have deep commitment to the market and staying power in the market. The second is, I think in lending, it does, the parentage does matter, especially when you are operating a regulated entity. The parentage plays a huge role. So we were very careful about our source of funds, if you may. And as you've seen with the country, making certain changes in how it brings in capital, I think source of funds was very, very important, and so was parentage. But the most important thing is we wanted to kind of get comfortable with the people, and kind of rationalize to ourselves, are these the people we want to be working with and building with? For me, I think, and for my team, I think it's been quite exciting to actually take what was a small fledgling credit business, combine it with another small fledgling credit business, and make it something interesting. And now our aspirations are even bigger, given the platform, the parentage, and everything else. So I think that was something that has worked out for us. That is what we had envisioned, and that has definitely worked out for us. So in many ways, yeah, it's been a great ride since.
Barbaros, Randy, was it different for you?
I think it's comparable, but at the end of the day, if we are seeing it from our perspective, it was we were in a very exciting competition in the market in Turkey. So PayU was the first mover. EasyGo founded 2 years after. But then I think. But I think in our case, the first target what we had was becoming the leading payment company here in Turkey. What we achieved, but then afterwards, I think this is the moment where you think about, okay, what's next? What's the next level? What you want to achieve? And what's the new also dimensions you want to go in? And in that case, I think it was very clearly, it makes no sense to build a kind of competition-driven topic internally in the PSP world, because the share of PSP versus banks was still 5% to 95%. So I think our approach and our thinking was more how we can become one of the 5 biggest financial institutions in Turkey. And in that specific point, then you decide, okay, you need the right partner on your side to combine forces to become something really relevant in the financial space in Turkey. And this is only if you are benchmarking yourself against the banks in Turkey rather than against the other payment companies in the country. So therefore, I think it was a very logical and step what made a lot of sense to come together, join forces, join platforms, make a lot of synergy potential or realize a lot of synergy potential, but then at the same time have the common goal and common target together to democratize payments in a country where banks are very strong, but at the same time 42% of the population is still unbanked. And there was a lot of room to go with, and in our case, it made a lot of sense to go that step.
Yeah, it just, what has been said so far, I can tell you it's also the same, on the other side. That I think for me, the first question has always been like, really, do you want to work with these guys, right? I mean, is it really someone you want to spend some time with, right? Because we are not investment bankers, right? I mean, it's not, the transaction itself is almost irrelevant, right? It's just the start, to get the story together. So I can assure you, that the first question, indeed, on the other side is always, is these people you want to spend your time with and be associated with, right? That's for sure. And then the second thing is, like it is for you, like, does it help me, get to the next stage? For me, it was always like, does it help you get to the next stage faster than what you could do on your own, right? And is it truly people, that are going to make us collectively stronger in this market, right? As simple as that. So I think that was the first discussion we had together, Randy, right? And at the time when we met in Dubai, you remember we had a quick chat, over a cigarette, which gives me, 3 minutes to give you your elevator pitch, more or less. That's the time of a cigarette. I remember that one. And it was more about, hey, you're not in Southeast Asia. How can you not be in Southeast Asia? And you were absolutely right. So how was it on your side, at one point that you decided to join forces, and what has it given you, right?
Yeah. So when we first started in 2011, we are up against a local competition, which is seriously, they were bigger, but then it was not tough beating them. But after winning them in 2014, 2015, you start to see the real international playing coming. They are Stripe. And then you start to look at yourself and say, man, do I really have the resource against them, to be very frank? So thus in 2018, 2019, that's where, 2018 when we started the discussion, genuinely it's between becoming part of PayU or becoming another big MNC or local growth MNC. And the key differentiation factor why we chose PayU versus the other guys, because if we were to go down that route, we become a payment department within that MNC. Versus we coming with PayU, we become still focusing on payment, truly focusing on growing the whole Asia Pacific business, and that's the key reason why we chose to join PayU instead of going with the other side.
If you had to pick up just one each, okay? So just one, right? What aspect of your organization culture have you brought to PayU? And vice versa. What is one thing of PayU that you brought to your own organization? Yeah, I think it's around the whole theme of culture, because you built a business around people and around the culture that I know each one of you believe very strongly in. So how do you see this dimension of culture working for you when there is such integration happening? What is it you've brought to PayU? What is it that you've taken from PayU?
So basically, Red Dot, we believe in transparency a lot. And that's why a lot of times when I come down to PayU, when I do the MMM, I'm always very upfront about how we do things. And I think that's something that what we thought has been promoting and something that we genuinely believe a lot. And on the reverse side of that, I mean, the truth of the matter is, we thought we are hungry, ambitious, but then when we become part of the PayU family, we learned that you are more aggressive. So the target that have been set by Laurent, yourself, Akash, those will be interesting for us on a very much on the regular periodic discussion basis. That's for me.
I'm sure we've not disappointed you. Barbaros, I always love, also going to your beautiful, splendid office, in Istanbul, which I think from the outside already said a lot about the culture that you built. And I know that for all the good reasons, you always care a lot about this, right? Has it been going for you?
I'm always saying the sum of the people is the culture of the company, right? And in that specific point, I think what we're bringing into the PayU organization, if I only have to pick one, is ambition. I think this is something what we are doing, what we did very well, and what we're still working on to keep with the team, and then also to enrich to the organization, is having really high expectations and also high standards in the work what you're doing. And then also run faster as your competitors. This is something what we would be believing in to create a Champions League team and win the championship. I think what the PayU organization is bringing in so far, because as I said, the touch in personal is not that much so far, is of course looking also from perspectives where we are only going into value creation and go, but then you have to think back and okay, what's the topics what you're not very interested in, or where you're not looking in to keep also the base and the organization stable for the next crisis situation, which most probably also could come. So therefore, I think if we are the gas pedal of it and keep it, then someone has to be the security belt, right? And I think this is a good comparison where we can, if we can make the best out of it, that this growth could be very sustainable and also strong and sustainable for the future.
Very good point. Very good point. And
Okay.
So I'll add one from our Patience days. So we've always been one to embrace failure, and I think this is a easily said one, easily painted on a wall one, but it's hard to really embody as an organization. So one of the things that I think through the years we had done well as Patience that we are now bringing to PayU is one, to embrace that failure, to fail fast, fail as often as needed, but pick yourself up and keep moving on. Own that failure, right? Own that failure and move on. And I think that takes a little bit of time, especially when you have two entities merging. But I think once we get comfortable in our skin to own that failure, I think we'll be fine. I think that'll fundamentally change how we operate. What I think we're taking from PayU is the ability to think really big and really long. I think as a startup, we are always in this existential crisis mode where we're not sure how we're gonna make payroll maybe 3-6 months out. So you're always thinking relatively short, executing even shorter sometimes. But I think the PayU platform gives us both the ability and the opportunity to just think a little bit long, a little bit bigger, to kind of just make those big glacial movements happen. So yeah, that's I think what we're bringing from PayU into our culture. Not just think immediate, but think long.
For me, the last one, because, hey, look, if you come across Warren Buffett, yeah, you really want to know where he's putting his money. And here I've got 4 great entrepreneurs, right? Serial entrepreneurs for some of you, right? And I like to know, if you had to start a new company right here, right now, where would you do it? What would it be? I think I'm trying to give some sense here, for the few hundred people still with us, listening to this, all the entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs looking at you, give them some ideas. What will be the business you would start, or what would be the business you would invest in?
Now, to a great extent, this whole COVID epidemic has scrambled and thrown up a few other opportunities as well. But at the end of the day, I think one thing it has reinforced is digital services, digital content delivery, digital, obviously, payments is a big part of that. I think are where the growth is, and globally, including the US, a lot of these are early stage. So for the entrepreneurs here in this group, I would say, given that we are steeped into payments, there are a lot of opportunities in payments, especially digital payments.
Well, I think we are well positioned for a lot of our people, right?
Exactly.
I'm not trying to create retention problems for ourselves, right? But what about you? Exactly. But what about you guys? Any final tip, on where the wannabe entrepreneurs should focus their attention?
I think there are opportunities everywhere, from waste management to energy, right? And as the world is turning, I think there's so many. But I always bet the jockey, not the horse, because there's going to be plenty of horses running the race. And in all our spaces, there have been many horses. It's always about the jockey. So I always bet the jockey.
We're seeing very clearly where the problems of today is. I think online education is one topic area. Logistics is still not solved everywhere, and also from other parts on a day-to-day life, there is other areas where the entrepreneurs should focus on. But if I would start a new company, most probably it would be somewhere around online education, where I think it's has a big movement and big change for the future.
Good one.
All right.
All right.
For me personally,
Yeah, Randy?
Go ahead, Randy.
okay. For me personally, it's about passion. So my advice to anyone that please go into something you are passionate about. For me, it's art collection. So I will be going to art if I were to do something again. But you know what? Yeah, not so soon. Yeah. So I just buy art for now.
All right, guys. We need to.
So one more point, Laurent, on the question on budding entrepreneurs. I think this is the forum and this is the opportunity for PayU to create a capability for entrepreneurs. Rather than entrepreneurs going out, I think we should create an environment where there is an opportunity to try internally and contribute to the larger group, given the larger focus on payments, the global focus, and so on, and the synergies across the different companies. I think that would be probably of great interest to create an incubator within PayU.
Hey, guys, we need to wrap up, I know. So thanks for your time again. And we'll continue on Workplace, but thank you for this. Talk to you soon. Stay well.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.